Hello, today's topic is 2.8 adding and subtracting sign fractions. Today we'll not only add and subtract sign fractions, but we're going to add and subtract sign mixed numbers. And so today we're going to combine the rules for both sign numbers for adding and subtracting and fraction rules. So one thing we need to remember about fractions is that we need a common denominator when we're adding and subtracting. We also need to remember our adding and subtracting sign number rules, which tells us that when we add sign numbers, we keep the sign of the larger number unless the numbers are both positive or both negative, and we can just combine them or subtract them. And if the signs are different, we're going to keep the sign of the greater number. For subtraction, we're going to change any subtraction to addition and then follow those adding rules. So let's get started. For example 1, we have some regular fractions that are both negative. So what we can do here is check out the signs and see that both of these are negative, so our answer is going to be negative. We also notice that they are not like denominators, so we're going to find our lowest common denominator. In this case, it is 12. So we're going to change each fraction to make them out of 12. So we're going to multiply by 3 for our first fraction and multiply by 2 for our second fraction. And we can rewrite below. So we're going to have negative 9 twelfths plus a negative 10 twelfths. That's going to give us a negative 19 twelfths. And we know that we should have our answer expressed as a mixed number in lowest terms. So 12 goes into 19 once, and this is going to be a negative answer with 7 remaining out of the 12. So our answer here is negative 1 and 7 twelfths. For example 2, our signs are different. So when our signs are different, we know it's subtraction in disguise. We see that the denominators are not the same. So let's change that first, and then we'll think about the sign afterwards. So we have 12 and 9. So I'm going to go up by 12. So I'm going to go up 12, 24, 36. And I see that 9 does make 36. So my lowest common denominator here is going to be 36. 12 times 3 makes 36. And 9 times 4 makes 36. I'm going to rewrite these fractions. 15 over 36 plus a negative 20 over 36. So we know the denominator will stay the same, and we see that the signs are different. So we're going to keep the sign of the greater number, which is the 20, and we're going to subtract. So we'll have a negative 5 36ths. When we get into signed mixed numbers, what we want to do is change our method from when we had positive mixed numbers. You know, back when we learned fractions or reviewed it, where we had just positive mixed numbers, we could add the whole numbers, make the fractions like fractions, and add the fractions, and that worked very well. But we also learned a second method, which avoids borrowing and carrying with adding and subtracting, and that's to change our fractions to improper fractions. And that's the method that we're going to use when we use signed mixed numbers. Because when we have signs, the signs don't only apply to the whole numbers, they apply to the fractions as well. So things can get a little tricky when we keep the numbers as mixed numbers. So our first step is to convert them to improper fractions. And so I'm going to show that first. So we're going to do 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So that's a negative 5 halves. Minus, and then we'll use our C method. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 3 is 15 over 4. Now you see that the denominators are different. It's really your choice if you want to change the fractions first and then to an improper fraction, or if you want to change to improper first and then worry about your denominators. Both methods are perfect. So I see here that I've got a 2 and a 4, so I need to only change my first fraction by multiplying it by 2. So I'm going to rewrite below. That gives me negative 10/4 minus 15/4. We don't like subtraction when we have signed numbers, so we're going to change this to adding and change the positive 15/4 to a negative 15/4. Now we have two fractions that are both negative, so our answer will be negative, and we add 10 plus 15, which is 25/4. We do need to change this improper fraction back to a mixed number. So we ask ourselves, how many times does 4 go into 25? And remember, the answer will stay as negative. 4 goes into 25 6 times, with 1 left over out of 4. So our answer here is negative 6 1/4. So let's do the next few questions together. Number 1, we see we have 3 fractions that we need to subtract. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of those subtraction signs. So this subtraction changes to addition, and the positive 7/6 becomes negative 7/6. And this subtraction changes to addition, and the positive 3/6 becomes negative 3/6. So we actually have 3 negative fractions to add. So that's great because we know our answer will be negative, but we don't have common denominators. So we find our lowest common denominator, which is 12. So let's change each of the fractions to be out of 12. So we're going to multiply the first one by 3, and the next ones by 2, and then we can rewrite. So this is going to be negative 9/12 plus a negative 14/12 plus a negative 6/12. We know that the answer is going to be negative, and we know we keep that denominator out of 12. And so I'm going to combine, and I'm going to put 6 and 14 together first because that makes 20, and then the 9. So we're going to have negative 29/12. And now we change to a mixed number. 12 goes into 29 twice, so keep my negative sign. 12 times 2 is 24, so I have a leftover of 5 out of 12, and that's in lowest terms. So negative 2 5/12. Number 2, we have a mixed number plus a proper fraction plus a negative mixed number. If these were all positive, you could use our very first strategy, which was adding up whole numbers, adding up fractions, and done. But as soon as you see a signed number, we need to change to improper. So let's go ahead and do that first. So 8 times 3 is 24, plus 1 is 25. So I'm going to write 25/8 plus the 3/4 plus, and now I'll change 2 1/6. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is negative 13/6. And now we can look at these denominators. So I've got 8, 4, and 6. My lowest common denominator here is going to be 24. So I'm going to change each of my fractions. 8 times 3 and 25 times 3. 4 times 6 and 3 times 6. 6 times 4 and 13 times 4. Okay, 25 times 3 is 75 over 24, plus 3 times 6 is 18 over 24, and then 13 times 4, I'm going to do that over on the side, that's 12, 52, so that's going to be a negative 52 over 24. And now I'm going to take a look at my signs. I've got 2 positive fractions and a negative fraction. So I'm going to combine the 2 that are positive, the 75 plus the 18. 5 and 8 is 13, carry my 1, so 93 for the positive. and then I'm going to take away the 52. Now the positive is where we're going to be on our answer. So take that 52 away, 3 minus 2 is 1, and 9 minus 5 is 4. So I'm going to end up with 41 over 24. And now it's time to divide up. Now 24 times 2 is 48, so this is only going to go one time. So let's check out the leftovers. So 41 minus 24 will give us our leftovers. So I'm going to borrow here. 11 minus 4 is 7, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So I have 17 remaining out of the 24. And 17 is prime, so we know we're in lowest terms. So our final answer here is a positive 1 and 17/24. If you'd like to continue on with me, I'm going to do a few select exercise questions, starting with number 1. Number 1, we have just proper fractions that we're adding together. We see the signs are both negative, so we know our answer will be negative. And then we see the denominator has the lowest common denominator, 14. So I'm just going to change my second fraction to raise the terms. So I'll end up with negative 1/14 plus negative 4/14. So my answer here is going to be negative 5/14. I'm jumping ahead to number 15. This can cause some problems. The reason why it causes problems is because it looks very simple when we've got a negative 4 3/5 plus 6. We might be tempted to just subtract the 6 minus 4, but that doesn't work because the fraction itself is also negative. So what we're going to do with number 15 is we're going to change everything to improper fractions. That's our safe way to deal with signed mixed numbers. And so we're going to go ahead and change the 4 3/5 to an improper fraction. So that's going to give us 5 times 4 is 20, plus 3 is negative 23/5. Plus the 6 becomes an improper fraction as well. We see that the denominators are of course different. So what we can do is multiply the 6 by 5 and rewrite. So this gives us negative 23/5 plus 30/5. Now we can see that we need to subtract 30 minus 23 and that our answer will remain positive. So this is going to be a 7. 30 minus 23 is 7 over 5. And we're going to see that our answer as a mixed number is going to be 1 2/5. So you see how above, if we just took the whole numbers and subtracted, we'd get 2 3/5. But 6 is not just subtracting the 4, the 6 is also subtracting the 3/5. And that is why we get an answer as 1 2/5. And we're going to do the same for number 16. When we see that we have a negative number, the safest route is to change to improper fractions. So I have a 2 3/5 minus 5. This is like adding a negative 5. So let's go ahead and change to improper fractions. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13 over 5. Plus a negative 5 over 1. As we saw in 15, we just need to change the one fraction. We're going to multiply it by 5 to have a common denominator, and this will result in 13/5 plus a negative 25/5. Now we can go ahead and subtract 25 minus 13. So 25 is negative, so our answer will be negative. And 25 minus 13 is 12 over 5. And 5 goes into 12 2 times, with 2 remaining over 5. So our answer will be a negative 2 2/5. I hope you found this video helpful. You can go ahead to the exercise questions for lesson 2.8.